Let's talk about the post-Trump verdict polling, starting to get a flavor now, about a week, well, exactly a week after the verdict, on whether it moved the race. And this could change, of course. It's only 1 week out, but here's where we stand. Real Clear Politics averaged the 3 polls so far that show it's basically tied. It's still tied. Trump's up 1, Trump's up 2, Biden's up 2, and another 1. And here's from YouGov, which polled 1,100 registered voters. We haven't seen likely yet, likely voters. The question was, has Donald Trump's conviction made you more likely to vote for him? 2% yes. Less likely to vote for him? 3% say less likely. Neither, 2. 93% say it has not caused them to reconsider at all. So if anything, Trump lost 1 percentage point. But most people aren't moved in any way. There was an interesting poll just looking at Georgia. And the question was, how does it impact your vote? 22%, it makes me less likely to vote for Donald Trump. 23%, it makes me more likely to vote for Donald Trump. And the rest say it doesn't make a difference to my vote. So what we're seeing here is basically they don't care. Are you surprised at that? David, I'll start with you on that.
No, this seems pretty much in line with the pre-verdict polling, maybe a small shift away from Trump. I do think it's important to remember that Trump always says everything is great for him. He said the Mar-a-Lago raid was great for his fundraising, and yet he lagged Biden's fundraising. And then he said that the indictments were great for his fundraising and polling, and he still continued to lag Biden in fundraising, and he's still lagging Biden by about 50% in fundraising. So I think the results are more or less what it seemed like they would be pre-verdict. But I would take the claims that this is just doing such great things for his fundraising with a bit of a grain of salt, because when the actual FEC disclosures come out, Biden's about 50% ahead in any period you look at in fundraising, which is a pretty good proxy towards enthusiasm.
Do you agree with that, Hogan? I mean, I think it's interesting that David went to the money piece of it, because if you zoom out, this whole lawfare campaign was not about snuffing down Trump's money raising and increasing Joe Biden's.
Yeah, I think you've done such a great job on your show, kind of outlining the nuances and the issues with all of these cases over the past several weeks. And so it's been fascinating to watch.
He's not talking to you, Dave.
Oh, he meant you, Megyn. I'm so sorry. I thought he was talking about the great job I've done. I'm so sorry, Hogan.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we're going to tune in.
I'm
and
sure
I bet
David
you also had amazing coverage.
I'm sure David has a great show too. But it's interesting because I think people who watch your show, right, left, and center, are getting a better flavor of exactly what these attacks are all about. And when 67% of the country believes that they're politically motivated, 59% believe Biden is involved in them, you kind of realize we level set. So once the verdict comes down, what they wanted to do was bleed him dry financially, keep him from the campaign trail. They did that. I don't think they really thought they would get a conviction because, as everyone said on the right and the left, this was the weakest of all the cases, but that was the cherry on top, and they got it. But you saw reaction from the Biden campaign and the administration after the verdict basically saying, no, this is going to be about November. Donald Trump said the same thing, because I don't think the American people care that much about this type of stuff. As we talked about in the first segment, they care about their own ecosystem, their own environment, and what they're paying for goods and services now versus a few years ago. That's what the election is going to come down to. And while weaponization of government and three-letter agencies against average citizens, including Donald Trump, will be an issue in the campaign, I still think it comes back to the economy and immigration, inflation, more than anything else.
Quick question for you, because I had Dave.
Megyn?
Yes, I can, but let me just tee this up because I wanted to get to this point too. Dave Ehrenberg, Palm Beach County DA, a Democrat, he comes on the show, and he and I were talking about how this verdict was going to affect the electorate, and I said Republicans are having the same kind of moment right now as they had when the attacks were launched on Brett Kavanaugh, where it had a way of uniting the Republican Party. And he said, well, Democrats are having the same thing. I've had Democrats stop me in the street saying they've never felt more enthusiastic about getting to the polls to vote for Joe Biden. So it was an interesting window into my world and his world. But the New York Times has a poll out today that captures exactly what's happening. And what it showed was, there was a swing in the overall numbers. Trump pre the verdict was 48, Biden was 45. Now Trump is 47, Biden's 46. So it went from a 3-point Trump lead to a 1-point Trump lead. But on the enthusiasm shift, Trump dominated. It shows that 18% of those who said that they support Trump, but they weren't planning on voting, like they like him, but they weren't that into him, have now decided they must cast their ballot for Trump. Just 3% of the comparable voters for Biden said the same. So go ahead.
So a couple different things that were mentioned there that I think are important to mention. Hogan said that, I can't speak to folks on the right, but that folks on the left were saying that this case was the weakest. It's not that we were saying it was the weakest. We were saying it was the least serious compared to the other ones in terms of the charges, but that doesn't mean the case is weak, and obviously the jurors didn't find it weak. Second thing I wanted to mention.
Many Democrats said it was weak. Did you? The New York Times had full op-eds by former prosecutors saying this case is an embarrassment.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't see that particular op-ed, but I'm representing the views of my views and what others I speak to
Ellie
say.
Honig of CNN, who came out, and I mean, you saw his piece. He said this case is an embarrassment. It's a Frankenstein. I mean, okay, keep going though.
The claim that this is a weaponized Biden DOJ, to me, is very much undercut by the prosecution of Biden's own son, of Bob Menendez, of Henry Cuellar, the investigation into Cori Bush, and Biden's not getting involved. On unity, it's tough for me to see the Republican Party as united thanks to the indictments based on almost 40% of the primary voters voting for someone other than Trump. And then lastly,
I was talking about the verdict.
To go back to, you were talking about the verdict. Okay.
That's what the Times poll was on.
The effect of that is. The indictment certainly did not seem uniting. The last thing, I've heard Hogan mention the 67% of Americans believe the attacks are politically motivated. I looked everywhere for that poll, couldn't find it. I know he repeats it and it's rarely challenged. What I did find is a poll from Ipsos yesterday, which finds overwhelmingly that Americans think the prosecution upheld the rule of law and was not motivated by politics. So I couldn't find what Hogan's claiming. But the most important question I have about the public opinion piece is, I mean, listen, public opinion is we should have some minimum standard for abortion. I can't imagine Hogan wants Roe v. Wade reinstated just on that basis. So I don't even know why he keeps bringing up the public opinion.
Go ahead, Hogan.
Yeah, it's a McLaughlin poll, by the way, that cites a 67%. Rasmussen has it, I think, somewhere close to. Pollster, but nonetheless, I'm citing the poll. You cite a poll. It's up to the American people, one way or the other. I think weaponization is a serious issue. I don't think it's going to be a top 5 issue. But one of the reasons it's so important to our side is that it just seems as though if you hold a difference in opinion of those who have power, then you're targeted. Because if you're sitting outside of an abortion clinic singing and praying, you get arrested. If you go to a school board meeting and say, why are you teaching my children that they're racist? You get arrested. If you go to Loudoun County, Virginia and say, why was my daughter raped in a bathroom with a transgender kid you put there who's a man? You get arrested. If you're a former president of the United States who participated in an NDA that happens all of the time, and the statute of limitations had gone past, and now we're going to try to make it a federal case. The whole thing reeks. The American people understand it. But again, regardless of the nuance, at its core, what the American people want is fairness. And you pointed to the Hunter Biden case as an example of how, no, it's not biased. I point to it as an example of how it is exactly biased. Because remember, the only reason we're there is because they had a sweetheart deal that somehow prevented Hunter from ever getting charged for any of the other many crimes he's committed in the future. And the judge goes, I'm not falling for this one. So now we're in a court case where Hunter Biden clearly has committed this crime, and we'll wait and see the outcome. I, for one, don't think he's going to get convicted because it is Delaware. But nonetheless, that's a weak example to point to. What about the other? To try and say the DOJ is not biased.
Yeah, I mentioned 3 other examples. One interesting thing to me about the Hunter Biden case is, and by the way, I think if he did this, then he should be found guilty and punished. Like when that congressman 10 years ago was found with money in his freezer, or Anthony Weiner, like I don't go out of my way to defend people because they're Democrats. I'm not even a Democrat. But there is one interesting statistic about the Hunter Biden case, which is if you want to talk about selective prosecution, only 0.04% of instances where someone puts incorrect information on a gun application when they should not be allowed to have a gun, 0.04% over a 10-year period are even prosecuted. So if there's any sort of arbitrary selection of who to go after, it seems that that's a great example of it.
I want to tell you a story about a guy named Leo Grillo. Leo was on a road trip and came across a suffering Doberman. This dog was severely underweight and clearly in trouble. Leo did not ignore the dog. Instead, he rescued him and named him Delta. But sadly, Delta was just one of many animals that needed help back then, and so many more still do. And all of this inspired Leo to start Delta Rescue. It's the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They've rescued thousands of dogs, cats, even horses from the wilderness, and they provide their animals with shelter, love, safety, and a home. Look how beautiful this looks. April marked 45 years since Leo rescued Delta. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to do what it does. If you would like caring for these animals to be part of your legacy, speak with your estate planner because there are tax benefits here, potentially too. You could grow your estate while letting your love for animals live well into the future. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more and speak with your advisor. We call dog a man's best friend for a reason. You could help those who need it most. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.